Okay, there we go. Speaker is on now. Okay, so we're on page Kuf Ayin Vav in the Tiv, and we came to number Reish Kaf Tes in the Tiv itself. So the question is here the Tam Lama Mishar Mishir Anal Bakatan Daika. Now before this, I didn't see him mention the concept that the mount of the talus has to be the size of a child's size. I didn't say there's all different kinds of sizes for children, so cotton, could be a lot of different things. Exactly what that means. Says Akadaim Sarg Bir Mifnei Ma Talu Chazal as Shir Ativas Atalis Bezoshi Yakasa Rosha Varova Shel Cotton. Apparently this must be in the Shulchan Aruch and the Gemara someplace, I don't recall it. Levar harav ki hatam bezecha bechum b'shum she'or hatzitzis hanikra kutzim. The reason why is because the light of the tzitzis themselves are coming from the concept of kutzim, memochin de'ivor, that come way back in the time of the mochin de'ivor. V'cha memochin de'ivor nekoyim memochin de'katnas. Of course, they're mochin de'katnas. B'shum kach toil gazerab es shi'ur shel hatalis b'katan. So therefore, that's what he's trying to say. Cotton. I'm not sure that he hasn't said, the tip does not say that cotton means cottonness. But that's the reason why he says that we say that it's the size of a cotton. Bekevin shatzitzios, Yod says memochin de cottonness, because they come out from the mochin de concept, but look at memochin de godless, and not from that. The mashad is boyer shatzitzios, and of course what we've said here, that the tzitzios, hem hakutzim shehem memochin de cottonness, v'hem neim shachim, they go all the way down to the chaz of zah. Shetzarich and the hizach of the hakpid b'shir rochva shalatalis, so that you have to be careful about the amount of the size of the width of the talus. I guess it means from the part that goes on your head, I guess downwards. That's the rocha. So he says. Shetirah talus makefes as called a rosh shahu shehem chabad. That the talus should cover the whole head, as called gufa mikol tzadadim, and also the entire body ad chaza until it reaches the chest. Shehem chesed gevura v'shlish elyon shel teferes, so that you have 5 1/3 spheros. Ba'ofen shetecha talus rachavo dai lahakif as called gufa mipanim ba'ach. Let me see where I'm at here. Okay. So then it says, V'dai atacha bebir zekeh. So that's enough. He says, we got that idea. You got the idea? He says, Marchu savish shema Rav Zal. This is what Marchu thinks he heard from the Rav. What did he say? This is what he heard from the Rav. So he says, so he goes like this. So how do we understand the concept of talus? Shem Havaya b'milui alofim. So take that word as a gematria 45. Who older the gematria 45? Because that, and we see it here. B'eser pamim shal Havaya b'milui alofim. Ehem b'gematria 10. So if you say 10 times that, you get to the number 450. Shehem b'kaminyan talus, which is the gematria of the word talus. Im koilo, the talus is 449 with a kolo. And then he says, Umasha talis he begematria eser pamim havaya b'milui alofim shuhu eser pamim shema who kadei lahoros, in order to teach us this. The horos al kach shachatalis he or hamakif al kol ha'eser sphera shal zer anpin. It's the time that you know that the number 10 is important here, because it comes over the entire amount of the body of zer anpin. Shekol Sefira Misefira Sazah, Hi Havaya b'milui ma. Each one of them is a Havaya by itself, and if you spelled it out, you would find that it was a Havaya of milui ma. Umasha Amarna Shekol Sefira Mehasfiros. Let me get this lined up a little bit. So all Sefira Mehasfiros Sazah, Hi Havaya b'milui ma is a Havaya b'milui ma. Hu Mishum Shechazah Hu So Shem Havaya b'milui alofim Shu b'gematria ma. This we know. Oh, Marchu mistafek. So Marchu, though, at the same point, is doubtful. Imhu achein shema zos macharav. He's not sure that he really heard this. So let's go to the next part. The next part says, Gam azchara shelo lilvo shatefilim kodim atalis afilu hatalis gadol tam el hanizkar. So I pondered this one a little bit. So since they come from the mocha de katas, so he wants to say that when you're putting on the talis, you're really bringing into yourself mocha de katas. So if we were, maybe I didn't know that before. So he says, asher kadmo, which always come first, ala mocha de gadlus, before the mocha de gadlus. So he says, so if therefore this reason, so first you have the kantas, then you have the gadlus. So even the big talis, the one that you wrap around yourself, for as we said before, we explained how it is that this represents that tzitzis themselves go down and become the makif for the milk, or their makifim. Hefach svaras k'tzaz mekubalim. He says this is the opposite of what some of the mekubalim think. Hamenichim at tefillin kodem atzitzis. They put on tefillin first. Atzitzis hagodol, kodem atzitzis hagodol. Even the big tzitzis. Achar shechanichun tzitzis cotton. After they put on the tzitzis cotton, then they put on the tefillin, then they put on the tzitzis godol. Now you think about this. I thought about this. Why would they think this? And certainly not the other voices who say that you don't put on the small one first, you put on the tefillin first, and then you put on the small one, then you put on the big one. But if you look at the Zohar, you're going to say Yimsa Emes Kedivarenu. You'll see that the truth of this is the way that we are saying it. So I had my 2 cents that I wanted to put into that. And let's see what the Rab says. I'm trying to figure out what would be the svara of those people who were holding that you put on the tefillin first. So I'm assuming that the reason why is because it's a makif, that they were talking about makifing. And the makif is greater than a panimi, and the tefillin represents panimius. So that's, I think, what their thought was, and at the end that you wrap the tefillin with the talis gadol because it's a makif. So that's my understanding of why they would take that position, but he says that's the wrong position. So since the talis cotton, the talis gadol, same thing with the big one. Hey, mamochin the katnas. That's a fact, he says. They were talking about when you're putting on your tzitzis, you're dealing about bringing in mochin the katnas. Mochin the katnas niknas and techida kodesh niknas and mochin the gadlus. Even though these mochin of katnas are makifim, which are very powerful lights. So he says lefichoch. So there he says therefore, seder rasiyas elach mitzvos tzarich lihios ba'ofen should be in this way. The first thing is that you should wrap yourself in the tzitzis which represent mochin de katnas v'achar kach aminichim tefillin shehem mochin de gadlus. Below dai bezer sheyalvish rak talis cotton kodem anachas tefillin. It's not enough to say that you put on the little one, which means actually the smaller, the lesser of the makifim. V'yasatech betalis gadol achar nachas tefillin. So you have to also wrap yourself in that before you put on your tefillin. Because both of them, even though we're talking about makifim, both of them are mochin the katnas, who call them tefillin. So therefore you have to have, that's the seder. The seder is katnas before gadlus. Let me move this up a little bit. 1 second. So he says, "V'hu hefech das mekubalim shebochel also peshara bein shitas." So that since we have actually, he says there's actually 2 shitas here. He says, and those are those mekubalim that try to do the mexa type of deal, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So therefore, they stopped putting on the talis cotton. But so they pasku, I guess it means their psak is to put on the talis cotton. Because I'm assuming that it means because it's the big maki. So he said, for sure, do not do this. Because they're not going according to the derek of Kabbalah, which is what? Katnus always precedes. That is the what we say from always precedes godless. She'ela hashita sevira lechu shatafilin kodmein v'rafilu levisha satalis kat. A mesha yilmad v'yayin ba'omek hasefer hazoyer ba'ofen harois. So you can find this if you go over there in the Zohar. If you do that, Yemimsa be'ezes Hashem as derek emes and one more. V'az yirek divrenu sheshtei mitzvahs atzitzes. These two mitzvahs have to do with tzitzes. Kodmen tefillin, they come before tefillin. The hinder shitaki deris atef hein betalis katan v'hein betalis godel. So he said at the beginning that you'll see that you wrap the two of them, the little one, the big one. So only after that. So he's saying, what's the Seder? The Seder is an unbreakable Seder. The Seder is that Katnus precedes godless, even if the Makif is a Makif. The Makif of Katnus is not as great as the Panemius of the Panemi of godless. So now we go to the next one, and we'll read across the top and try to get a vision of what he's talking about. Tam lamacha katan pata mitzitzis. So if we're measuring by a cotton, then why should it be pata from the tzitzis? V'im tomer ma'achashat tzitzios. Heim b'mochen the katnas. So since they represent mochen the katnas, well, hey, about this, v'heim ikar mitzvah, and that's really the ikar of the mitzvah, he says. Ki talis atzmo eno ala zecher ba'alma, because the talis itself is only a recognition or a remembrance. It's a remembrance or something like that. Him came lamacha cotton, pata mitzitzis. So since it's really dealing with katnus, then why should a cotton be pata? The tshuva ki'ena kutzim demochen de katnus gedelim ben the aset tzitzios teluyim adachazev ad reisha denot. What's the reason? The reason is because the kutzim, those are the hairs that we're talking about, that become very long. Hamochen de katnus gedelim, so these mochen, they don't grow. V'na'asim tzitzios, and make tzitzios themselves, tuluyim adachazev ad reisha denot. They don't go down any further. They do what they do, and that's it. This only happens over the course of a certain amount of time. And that happens with the coming of the Mochen de Gadlus. Then it happens that I think he's saying that the Mochen de Gadlus get pushed into the nook. But before that, no. So therefore they're going, but they're growing little by little. Because for the reason that they came first, bisman, this arech shir orcham. So therefore, since that we're talking about these mochen called the kotzim, so that these kotzim are actually coming down little by little, but then this arech shir orcham. So you have a lengthening. Okay, so we're just at the top of page Kuf Pei, and it says Bisman, and this Arech Shir Orchan Yoser Min Nimin, so therefore we see that it keeps growing more than the Ninim, which are Sa'aros, Keniskalar, which are, and also the hairs, which we mentioned up above, which are three different grades of hair coming out of Zeranpin. Now let's come over here, and we would be on page, on number Reish Nun Daled. I don't know if we have enough time to do much. So he said, V'kasha. Now there's a problem here. He said, V'im tomer ma'achashat tzitzias heim mocha de katna. So they want to say, V'kasha l'halo heina tzitzias shal talis cotton. We're talking about the talis cotton. V'heina tzitzias shal talis godel, or the big one either. Heim ramalzim ala mocha de katna shehem bakotzim. And you just said that the reason why we measured by a cotton, is because it has to do with these kotzim, which are all coming out of mocha de katnas. And from them, they're with the so that we have some kind of understanding. So therefore, since that is the case, then the mikra the mitzvah has to do with the tzitzis. That is its size. Shahare Kavar Bi'arno La'el Shachatalas Atzma Lehiyosha Oira Ko Gadol, that we said that what? The light that comes out of the tzitzis is a tremendously powerful light. Ve'in anu masigin, so we're not able to reach it or appreciate it, understand it at all. As he rak lezecher ba'alma, all we're doing is mentioning the fact we're not pulling it down to ourselves because we can't reach it. So therefore we're just mentioning or remembering it. V'keveshat romas the kutzim shulchan b'mochon dekatas, since it's a remes the kutzim which are mochon dekatas. Im kain adarabba he tzarak lehiyos chiyuv gam al katanim shehiyah chayav nisat betzetzes. Shahare lekatan yesh lo mochon dekatas, because he has mochon dekatas. V'avat tzitzis him mochon dekatas, so you have katnas and katnas. V'lam b'patra chasakat mitzitzis, we should put it on a child immediately. Miyashiv Rav ki hargam shatzitzis hem bakotzim shehem b'mochon dekatas. Akat tzitzis b'romes ki hakotzim kevar godlu v'higir adachazet dezecha ba'achrav. So we already know that they already grew down onto the back of Zer Anpin, or back up until they reached the chazet. B'sham nagucha b'rosha nok. There they reached the head of the nok. Ki zecha b'seder shakotzim v'gerem in the chazet. It doesn't happen at one time. So it keeps going until you reach the time of godless. In other words, it's you have the embryonic stage, and then you have Unica, and then all this takes time. So that's when it finally reaches there, it gets pushed down. Who rock be'esha kotzim kavar godlo v'hispashtu adachaza dezan, until they already reached that place. Rosh Hanok, and reached there too. Shas huzamana godless, and you know also is another fact that when they actually reach these stages, that is at the chest, the hairs, that's the time when godless comes in. So now he's already gadol, he's already big. Before that time, and there's no nook there, there's nothing completed. So therefore the tzitzis don't really apply over there for the Katan Pater and we'll stop here. Katan.